Today on Marriage Unmasked, we're talking about 6 reasons that a husband stops showing love towards his wife. And again, as usual, this is absolutely not about blaming men. It's not about blaming or shaming women. We just want to get after some understanding. We want to understand what's going on underneath the surface in these situations that are very common in marriage. And they've been common in our marriage and in a lot of the marriages that we work with.
And I actually got a message requesting that we talk about this because just a couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast on 6 reasons that a wife stops respecting her husband. And so we wanted to do the opposite for husbands. And so that's why we're even talking about this. So we really value your input and we love to talk about the things that you guys are needing guidance on.
Yeah, absolutely. So send us some more suggestions. So a wife will often ask, why did my husband stop showing love to me? Like, where did he go? Why is he not showing up and being that loving person that he was early in our marriage or when we were dating? And, a husband may think, why do I try anymore? Like, she doesn't seem to recognize anything I'm doing. She doesn't seem to really care about the ways that I am trying to show her love. It may feel for him that every time he starts to engage with his wife, it turns into another fight or a disagreement or a disconnection. And he's tired of trying when that is the result. And often what looks like a lack of love from a husband is really, it's not like he stopped loving his wife. Most men don't just stop loving their wives. What often happens for us as men is that love and the way we're showing it gets buried under a lot of pain. It gets buried under shame, a lot of unhealed wounds and things like that have been triggered over and over again in the relationship. And so we as men start to struggle to express love in a way that is actually meaningful to our wives.
So let's start off with number 1. Now, the first one is that he feels emotionally unsafe. And I think we talk about that so many times, that safety is so important. And when we talk about this, I want to make sure you understand that we're not saying that you both need to do something perfectly or the other person, like, they are just going to shut down. They don't need to connect then because it's unsafe. I think a lot of times people are now using this unsafety as like the big reason why they can't show up to the relationship. And I understand the pain of feeling unsafe in your marriage. I really do. And it is needed. It's needed, but it's not something that you need to have your spouse do perfectly, because you can actually get safety with God and create that safety within yourself too. So oftentimes men, they don't feel emotionally safe, and it's not only feeling emotionally unsafe with their wife, it's they feel emotionally unsafe with themselves. They actually don't know how to create that emotional safety for themselves, which is so important. And so he might withdraw because his attempts to connect with his wife are, met with criticism or correction. And so he feels like a failure. And this happened in our marriage so many times. I'm thinking specifically of when, like, in our sex life, and Adam is like, he's good to go, like, just do the same thing probably for, 50 years. Like, just, he's good with the routine. He doesn't need any mix up. He's like, okay. And I am like, no, I need variety. This is boring. I need something different. And what happened was he would take my correction or my suggestion or my frustration. And I was frustrated because I was continuing to tell him, hey, honey, I need some variety. I need us to mix things up. And he had his own insecurities. And that's been kind of a part of our story as well. This has kind of been the cycle for us where it's like, yes, I am critical and I am correcting, and he feels like a failure, partly because of what I'm saying, but also partly because he has his own insecurities, even coming into the marriage. And so he's quick to shame himself and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Cara said, I came into the marriage with a lot of unhealed things and not really understanding some of these things about myself. And so I often, things that she would say, especially about very like personal things like sex, I could take it very personally. That was like a knee-jerk reaction for me to take things personally and think that if she's correcting some kind of behavior that I'm doing, that automatically means that she has a really negative view of who I am. And so I had a lot of difficulty separating those two things, like my behavior and my identity were often very mixed up together. And it's not healthy, because if you start to equate your behavior and your identity, then anytime you do something wrong, anytime you do something that isn't well received, or that there's some correction needed or some criticism. And it's fair enough. Kara has these desires. She wants some variety in her sex life. That's totally understandable. And yet I would make that mean something about me. I would make that mean something about who I am, that I'm not good at this. I'm not good enough for her in the bedroom or whatever it is. And when I do that, then those insecurities are flooding and shame can come out. And yet it's what I need to do is heal those things. I need to separate those two things, separate my identity from my behavior. And so that when she has a certain opinion about my behavior, it no longer means anything about me. It's just something to work on, something to change, something to shift.
I mean, and yet for the longest time, I didn't think that I was correcting him. I thought I was sharing a need. I'm like, I'm letting him know that I need this. But I didn't know how to, and I wasn't able to naturally express that in a feminine way, which is what I teach wives to do because it is so powerful. I mean, this whole episode today, I think we need to remember that wives have such power and such influence in their husbands' lives. And when we speak things that are hurtful and correct and fix and all that, we're really bringing them down. Where when we speak life and belief and all of that over them, that can bring them up. They really are inspired to step up. So anyway, I didn't understand that. And we had our masculine feminine dynamic so off. So I was in more of a masculine spot anyway, living in this kind of frustrated, exhausted energy. And now here's another thing where I'm like, goodness, I asked him to change things up. And so my frustration was coming out and I wasn't just sharing my need. He was getting that energy. He was getting the frustration and the even maybe like judgment about him. He was getting that all from what I was saying. And so it's really important for us as women to think before. And some of the time I was talking in the moment, like we're in the middle of having sex and I'm like, what is this again? Right? And I was so frustrated. And it would have been so much wiser for me to, I mean, not like I need to just go through the motions and just like, okay, just, right? I'm not saying that because sex is for enjoyment for both of you, but we could have taken a break, process my emotions, and then come to him from a calm way and really express my needs from a grounded feminine energy instead of this hurt, frustrated, exhausted, more masculine energy. Because the more we're correcting and fixing and criticizing, he starts to feel like he's always getting it wrong. And he's something that needs to be fixed. And that's, I mean, that's so painful for any human being to feel like they need to be fixed. And I'm not saying that's a true thought or one that it's okay to keep adopting.
You need some healing there.
True, right? It's just not true. But when the person who's so close to you, and like I said, women have that huge, powerful influence over their husbands, when she is speaking that over him, that can be just really painful. And so at the same time, it doesn't mean that you as a wife are mean. This doesn't mean you're a bad wife, that you have this Jezebel spirit or all those other Christian spiritual kind of terms that I hear sometimes. You're hurting too, just like I was hurting too. It wasn't okay for me to talk to him that way. It was painful. There were consequences to that because he starts to learn it's not safe to engage. He didn't even really want to show up anymore. And we'd be in the middle of having sex. I'd say something and he'd leave. He was done.
Yeah, it was like rejection. I felt rejection then. I think it would have been wise so many times to just take a little break, to say, okay, let's hit pause. Let's just take a break and reset. And maybe I could reflect and think, okay, like she's just asking for something that's completely legitimate here. This has nothing to do with me. Be able to reset the energy and then come together and not feel that rejection again. But this pattern would happen where I would go to shame, she would go to blame, or she would get critical. And it would end up in disconnection instead of what we could have done is really reset things and gone into a deeper connection because of that.
Yeah, because we both really wanted each other, but we both ended up feeling rejected because I also felt rejected.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was just, and that happened so many times for us. It was so painful. This is like the story of our marriage is just painful cycle after painful cycle in different areas, all over the place. And so It is so important to understand these things because we didn't really understand a lot of what was going on under the surface. And that's why we are so passionate about trying to bring that clarity for you all too.
Yeah, and so many of those things that are going under the surface are deep heart needs that need healing. And we just didn't know that at the time. We weren't going after that deep inner healing that we really needed. So number 2 is respect has been replaced with contempt. And we've sort of touched on that a little bit, but I mean, every husband deep down always wants to be his wife's hero, a man that she looks up to, that she can't get enough of, and he wants to impress her. I mean, if you go back to dating, like, what is the guy trying to do? He's trying to impress her. He's trying to make her feel special and show her what a great guy he is and how he can take care of her. But he really wants to be her hero. Like, that is deeply, deeply embedded in us as men. And so what can happen over time when instead of getting praise or getting admiration or respect from his wife, he's constantly getting contempt, and she's saying things and acting in such a way that he feels less than and he feels small in the relationship, then he really starts to shut down. He starts to shut down his heart. And also it can go to shame. It can go to all those things again because, well, I'm not enough for her. I'm not her hero. In fact, I'm a problem instead of a hero. These are all unhealthy thoughts he's thinking. I mean, these are things that he needs to heal too. But things like looking down on him, or when you correct him publicly, that's really hard for men. And I've heard that many times from men too. Like, they're out with their friends and then their wife. I mean, it's very scarring for a man because he wants respect not just from his wife. He also wants respect from other people outside of the marriage. And when his wife, whom he loves and who he wants to be her hero, is then disrespecting him or correcting him, shaming him in front of other people, it's extra painful for him. And this can happen in front of the kids too. And I know that has happened for me numerous times where I maybe have an unwise way of parenting my kids, or I have a different opinion than she does. She has come in and started to correct me in that moment in front of the kids. And then I start to shut down because I'm like, why am I even trying to parent in this moment? Because now my kids don't even respect me. It really eats at a man's heart and his soul when those things are happening, and especially as they continue to happen. Another thing that can happen is comparison is really hard for a man. So sometimes wives will bring up other men and say, I wish you could just be more like him. And that's hard. That's hard for a man to hear. And it's not always that obvious either. I mean, sometimes it's just sharing social media posts. Why can't you be more romantic like this guy was in this post? Things like that. It starts to give him a sense of disrespect in the relationship, and it starts to become very painful, and he starts to protect his heart then from that pain, and it's harder for him to overcome that and then want to do things that are showing love and connection with his wife.
And contempt is not something for a wife that just, oh, she's full of contempt for her husband. This doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen quickly. This isn't just the way she is and the energy she brings. This happens over a period of time. This happens because of disappointment after disappointment, because of hurt after hurt after hurt. She is speaking from a hurting place. And it's not a reason to, speak with contempt. It's not a reason to treat your husband that way, but it is, I understand, it is coming from a hurtful place. I almost think of contempt as like this superiority complex. I think for me, a lot of it came from like the lack of masculinity and leadership. I was expected to behave a certain way, but I wasn't given the support and the care and the leadership that I was craving. And so I acted out a lot. And I don't think any of it was like premeditated, like I'm going to act this way to him. I'm going to compare him to other men. It was kind of like what was deeply, deeply hurting inside me was just coming out my mouth, and there wasn't a filter, and I wasn't being careful about what I was saying. I was just so frustrated, felt so unheard, like my needs were not getting met. And so all that hurt was just spewing out, and it was so unhealthy, and it was very damaging. It was not okay. And that's why when that situation is happening in a marriage, we really need to, both people, take a look at what are the hurts that I have going on inside of me that need healing. We have to take ownership for that healing. We can't just keep blaming. I mean, I could blame him all day. He could blame me all day. We could, because we were both hurting each other. But that doesn't do anything. We have to stop. We have to let them show up the way they're going to show up. And then we have to attend to our heart and get the healing that we need. So number 3 is he feels needed but not desired. Man, we've worked with some couples where this is so evident and it's just heartbreaking. These husbands they are honorable men. They are working for their family. They're providing for their family. But that's not what a man's identity is alone, right? He's not just a provider. He's not just this paycheck. And I think a lot of times guys kind of feel like I'm just a paycheck. I'm just bringing in the bacon and I'm also just a problem, right? They kind of feel like they're reduced down to something where they're more than that. They really are. Men are complicated and incredible gifts from God, just like women are. And they want to feel chosen. They want to feel wanted. And when that desire disappears, when a man doesn't feel wanted by his wife, they often do. They often retreat and feel resigned. A woman's desire for her husband can die when the polarity is off or she feels unheard, some of these things we've been talking about. And then the last thing she wants to do is have sex with her husband or be physical, have that kind of connection. And he takes that as she doesn't want me. And that can be so painful. I mean, that would be painful for anybody, but I think it's especially painful for men there.
It is especially painful for men because I think we've touched on this before, but many men, they feel more emotionally connected to their wife because of the physical intimacy. It really comes from that. And so where a woman, she wants to feel connected beforehand, he doesn't feel connected until that happens. Until that physical connection happens, he's not feeling the emotions of connection as much. He really does want that desire from it. Like that means something to him. Him being the hero again. He really wants to feel wanted by his wife. And when he doesn't feel wanted, he doesn't feel loved by her. He doesn't feel she cares about him. And can often just feel like, hey, I'm just a paycheck here. I'm just providing. I'm bringing in some money. I'm not really that important other than that.
And I don't think a man wants a woman just to go through the motions either. This isn't about, okay, wives, just have sex with him. Okay, just let him touch you and kiss you when he wants to. Yeah. Because that's not feeling desired either. Right. And we're not asking you ever to just go through the motions in any part of marriage. We really want you to, it's information, right? When you notice you don't want something or you're not connected in that way, or this brings something out of you, it is information and it shows you where your heart needs healing. So we're not telling you just go through the motions, just meet his needs. Nope.
Yeah, he doesn't. That is not what he wants. So number 4 is that unresolved hurt has never been repaired. There's been pain that he's experienced over and over again, and it's not actually been healed. I know this from experience too. I would almost collect hurt. I would collect it in my heart over and over again. And so then I started to almost expect it. Certain situations would come up where I started to believe this story then that, okay, when I step into parenting, let's say, when I try to lead in that area, then she's going to be critical in this or that way. When I'm driving the car, if this happens, then she's going to say something. And so I started to almost look for those things. It's unhelpful, but I had collected so many of these hurts in my heart already. And so it became sort of this narrative, I had these Carr likes to talk about glasses, like pain glasses that you put on. Well, I had these pain glasses on because of the many times and ways that she had been critical to me when I felt unheard, like she wasn't really seeing me for who I was. She was seeing me as sort of a project that needed to be fixed, or someone that she was basically putting up with instead of really wanting to be around. Like we said, we both needed growth on a lot of things that was hurting that dynamic. But it can also happen when his needs or his pain seem like they don't matter to her. And that happened quite a bit too. I would sometimes be in pain from whatever, and she was also in great pain. And so she would go to that place of pain, and I felt like my pain didn't matter. I had a story inside of myself that what I was feeling was never as important as what she was feeling. And that was sort of an unhealed thing inside of myself, but it did cause a lot of pain. And that was a story that my feelings didn't really matter. And some of that was because my feelings didn't even matter to me as much. So how is she supposed to care about my feelings when I haven't even done that work to explore and understand them and to actually give them space? But nevertheless, when I was hoping for some kind of care or concern about how I was feeling in certain circumstances, I know sometimes I'd come home from work, I'd have a really hard day, and really physical, really exhausting day, and I might say something, but she was so caught up in the stress of the house and what's going on at the house that she didn't necessarily have capacity always in those moments to have space for what I had been going through, and she hadn't experienced it. And so there were times where I just kind of bottled that up. I just kind of held that back, and I didn't share stuff that I've been going through, or struggles that I had. We as men, we do need to understand our emotions more. We need to be able to be strong in sharing those emotions with our wives, but wives also need to provide some space for that, and there needs to be some repair that happens, or else these pains just keep on going and they collect in our hearts, and they can cause disconnection over time. What happened for me too is I started to believe that repair was never really possible. I assumed it was all up to me anyway to repair things, and that I wasn't capable of doing so. And so I would often like just kind of shut down, or like slowly go numb over time, just to protect myself and just to survive in the relationship.
Number 5 is when the masculine and feminine polarity is gone. And I kind of mentioned that a little bit before, but when a wife has had to carry the mental, the emotional load, right? She steps into this more masculine energy, and it's not because she wants to, right? This happened in our marriage, as we talked about over and over, and it was not because I wanted to.
Even though I thought it was because she wanted to. So I thought, this is her personality. This is just what she wants to do. Everything has to be a certain way, and so she wants to do it all, a certain way, and it has to be her way. And that was not a helpful story.
So when the dynamic is happening, there is a gap, right? When a man steps out of his strength and his gifting that God has given him, there is a gap there. Somebody has to step in. And so that's when the wife does that. We can see that, happening even in the Bible with Jezebel and Ahab, and where he is clearly not stepping into his strength, and he's whining in his bed, crying about how he can't get what he wants. And she's like, what is your problem? You're the king. And so she's like, I'll take care of this. And she did. That's not our role. That isn't going to create a good dynamic. It creates a lot of pain. And it does, it from the outside, and maybe even from the inside a little bit, it does look like things are fine because the marriage and the family is functioning, right? But it killed attraction and intimacy on both sides. And that's also, I think, where some of the contempt and things like that came from for me too, is like, I'm not attracted to him anymore. I don't want him. I really didn't, because it was just really painful to be in that place, and he could feel that energy from me. And that was really hurtful for him. And it was really painful for me to have to be in it. And so, the masculine and feminine energy, this is meant to be a dance, this beautiful dance where it actually brings you together, and it fuels both of you, right? When a woman is relaxed into her femininity, she naturally softens, and she brings this gentleness and this playfulness and beauty to the relationship, and it pulls him in, and it inspires him to step up even more. She relaxes into that when he has stepped into his strength. Yep. And created this safe, beautiful place for her to relax, right? Think of these strong arms, and you can relax into them. A lot of wives aren't feeling that. They're not feeling that strength. And so they feel like they have to provide that themselves. Well, then it takes you right out of that, and it puts you in this very painful, head-butting place. It honestly created a disaster in our marriage. Yeah. So many things flowed out of that unhealth. And we didn't know how to name any of it, and we didn't know what to do with any of that pain.
We didn't know what was going on. Yeah, it was just so hard when you don't understand that dynamic, when you don't really understand it. And then even when you start to understand it and you don't know exactly how to heal it either, because for a while that was the case too. It's like there's this period of time where it's like, okay, we understand, but it's been going on like that for so many years. Yeah. How do we correct that? It's a slow process, and a slow, painful process of growth and healing on both sides to start to adjust that dynamic and back in balance again, and so that they're fueling each other instead of competing with each other.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have my Femininity Restored course, which is available in Restored, my membership for wives. That course is such a deep dive into this. It is, I think, I'm not even done creating it yet. I think there's going to be 11 or 12 modules. I'm on number 9 now. But it is so deep. And because this stuff, it's not like surface level, like, oh, just do this, just do that. No, right. No. It is so deep. It's a journey. This is not something that, okay, well, wives, you should just, choose your words better, and you need to just respect your husband and just, no. And it's not husbands, you need to just da da da,
No.
right? There's a depth to it. And when it's been happening for a while, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, but it's beautiful. I also want you to know it can be a really beautiful journey. It's one you want to take as soon as possible. I'll say that, because if we could have done this right away, oh my goodness, I wish there was something like this out there for us back then, which is why we've created it for you guys, because I can only imagine what our marriage would have been like. And there's no need to look back on with it with regret.
And just like Kara has her course, Femininity Restored, I have mine for my members, my Refined Within course, which is a lot of inner healing for men. Because for men, a lot of pain in our masculinity and the ways that we're showing up has to do with wounds that are in our hearts and not knowing how to heal those things, especially like identity work. Knowing who you are in Christ is so powerful, and also developing that sense of who I am, what I want, where I'm going in life, and being strong in those areas again, and starting to wake up from this passive slumber that we've been stuck in so often, and that is very much the way things are often in society right now, is men checking into this more passive state and having these unhealed wounds and not actually healing them because we don't know about them and we don't go after that, and things have affected us in our past that we've just stuffed down, buried in the shadow of who we are. And until we start to bring those things up and really identify them and really work on them, then we live somewhat separated from ourselves and separated from who we really are at our core. And so we are just doing out in the world, trying to distract from this inner pain and things that are going on inside of us. And so we end up showing up in unhealthy ways and stepping out of our masculinity because of these wounds and because of this inner healing that hasn't happened inside of us yet. And so that's why my men's membership is really powerful, because not only do men need healing, inner healing, we also need community. We need support. We can't do this just in isolation. You can grow in isolation to some extent, but you can't do it as powerfully or as quickly as you can with other men who are helping you along in that journey. And so that is why our memberships are so powerful for this. Number 6 is a man will often struggle to step into leadership again and lead in the area of loving his wife after he's failed at something, or he feels like he's failed in some area. What is often happening for men, and what has happened for me too in this particular one, is he thinks that the best way to love her in those moments of failure is to leave her alone. He thinks that he's just hurting her all the time. If I'm the one bringing her pain over and over and over again, then the best thing I can do, the best way that I can love her, because I still love her, is to leave her alone and not be around her and not cause the same pain over and over and over and over again. And so he often will check out. He will isolate from the relationship, and she will interpret that as a lack of love, even though in his mind, he's loving. He thinks he's doing the loving thing. He thinks he's protecting his wife. So that dynamic, that gets really painful, because then she's feeling isolated, she's feeling alone, she's feeling like he's not leading. And so what it really takes is it can take a gentle invitation instead of like accusation, because accusation can make it worse, right? If he's doing this, if he's separating himself, trying to show love in that way, and some of it's self-protection too. It's not all showing love, but there's a kind of a mix to it. It's like he's protecting his own heart in an unhealthy way, usually isolating because of that failure and maybe some shame, but he's also, I don't want to hurt her anymore. I don't want to cause damage anymore. If she comes at him in accusation, she comes at him, you're not showing up, you're being passive again, you're checked out, you're not leading, you're not loving me. He's going to be confused. And this was me often too. I would withdraw in order to protect her. Then she would want to force connection, and she would want to bring these things up in an accusatory way. And this would be very confusing for me, because it's like, what do I do now? How do I lead this? Because I'm hurting her either way. I'm hurting her if I'm trying to protect her by hanging back and trying to deal with my own issues. And I'm hurting her by doing that. And so now what do? How do I lead this situation? And a man wants to feel successful. He wants to know that he has a wise plan of action, that he has it together, that he's able to actually do something that is going to change the dynamic. And when he doesn't have that figured out, it can just be incredibly hard for him to lead out of that situation when he's feeling completely alone Again, this is where he needs the support of other men, because this is where the wisdom of other men can be very powerful for him, whereas his wife isn't going to be able to help him necessarily step into that leadership that he needs to step into and lead the way in love again, unless she can do so very gently. If she can do it very softly, sometimes that's hard because she's hurting too.
So if you're a wife listening, this isn't all on you to fix your husband, but you do have a lot of power and influence. And that's the thing I want you to remember. The Bible talks about your words, the power of the tongue speaks life or death. And I know I have spoke so much death over my husband and over our marriage over the years. And it was not intentional. I was not trying to do that. It was from my own hurt. And so I think that's the number one area to focus on is what is hurting inside of you. You need to heal that so you can come back to who you are. You already are this beautiful feminine woman. It's just buried under pain. So start healing that and come back to that power that you have, that amazing influence that you have, and to inspire your husband and to really build him back up again. Even if you have hurt him a lot like I have, you can come back. You can repair, right? God wants to restore what's hurting, and he will.
And if you're a man struggling in this situation, you're struggling to show love to your wife because of some of these things, because of this pain and this hurt, and maybe a lot of this resonated with you. This didn't just come out of nowhere either. There's things that need some healing. And you as a man, it is on you to heal those things. She cannot heal those things for you. As soft and as lovely and as wonderful as she comes to you and invites you, and she's not going to be able to heal shame. She's not going to be able to heal these inner wounds that you have and this pain and your identity. She can't do that. You have to do that. You have to do that work with God. And you can get that healing with God, and you can get that healing with other men too. And it's super powerful, because then as you step more into that masculine energy again, and your wife steps into that more feminine energy, it's amazing what can start to happen in your relationship again.
Love doesn't usually disappear in a marriage. We think it does, right? It's like, oh, we just don't love each other anymore. That's probably not the case. It does go quiet though when one of you or both of you feels unsafe, or you feel unseen, or there's things that are unrepaired. But it can be woken back up again. I mean, just think about makeup sex, right? Like, you're in this really painful place, and then you start to repair, right? Or you start to see each other, or you start to create that safety, and then it's like, boom, you're back together and you feel more in love than ever. That is a similar thing that can happen, right? You can rebuild and you can get that love, flowing easily between you two again. Not like there's never going to be a problem again or anything like that, right. But the love is not disappeared. I believe it's still there, and it can come back. So we hope this podcast maybe helped you give words to some things that you've been feeling, or, gave you information for what's been going on for you guys. And if you couldn't relate at all, we're sorry. Send us some feedback. Tell us what else you would like us to talk about if we're missing the mark here. But we hope that our honesty and our vulnerability really spoke to you. And we would love it if you'd share the podcast, if you'd rate and review it. That would help so much just to get the word out there. We will see you next week.